Guys, welcome back to Sweet and Sour Soccer. As always, before we get started, make sure to hit that like button and also hit that subscribe button if you're new here. Today, we're going to be looking at the top 10 most underrated players in the Premier League right now. I think this one's going to be a fun one to do. I think it's going to cause a lot of debates in the comments as well. So, guys, if you disagree with the order, please let me know. And also, if I've missed a player completely, also let me know. The interesting thing about underrated players is sometimes they do exactly that. They go under the radar. So I am going to be giving my top 10, but of course, it doesn't mean I'm necessarily correct. But if I am, feel free to let me know as well. You know, it's always good to spread the love. So let's dive straight into it. We've got the top 10 most underrated players in the Premier League. As you can see, a couple there that might come up later on. So, diving straight into it, we have, first of all, Yerry Mina. For me, he has to be on the list. I really think he's been, you know, and it's one of those players that it's more when they go missing that you start to realise just how good he is. I think Everton have really missed him this season with his injuries. And I think it's just one of those where, you know, as I say, when a player goes missing, he's not available through injury. You can see what's happened to Everton defensively. They don't look as confident. They don't look as strong. And Yerry Mina is definitely their leader in that defence. And also getting up for corners as well. He does score himself a goal every so often. Moving on to number 9. Jack Harrison for me. He had to go in here. And it's an interesting one. For me, he's underrated. He really is. And it's he's not had the best start to the season so far. He hasn't really hit the numbers that he did in the previous season. But that still didn't stop him making it into my list at number 9. It was 8 goals and 8 assists that he got last year in the Premier League. Unfortunately, so far, as I say, 9 games this season, no return on goal or assist so far. But for me, he's quite underrated because of what he does contribute to the team. And I think he goes a bit unnoticed, mainly because of Rafinha. But what can you say about Rafinha? Just pure class player, isn't he? But it does mean, for me, the player on the other side, that wing, more often than not, Jack Harrison, does go a little bit unnoticed. And I think he will regain that form at some point in this season. Moving on, and I always find it hard being a Wolves fan to put a Wolves player in, but I had to for this one. Maybe I'm being a little harsh on him, only putting him at number 8. But as I say, let me know if you think he should be in the list, and if he is, should he be higher, lower? Yeah, just let me know. Max Killman. I think he's definitely underrated. I think he's underrated by Gareth Southgate. I think there's a couple of players that I'll talk about in this top 10 where I feel that they should perhaps be included in the England setup and are yet to do so. And Max Killman's definitely one of them. We've seen some of the defenders not really performing this year. The England defenders. Obviously, Tyrone Mings at Villa isn't quite having the same fortune that he had. And Max Killman over the past couple of years has really stepped up, and he's looking at the moment the best defender in that Wolves setup. He really is. And I think he's probably one of the first name on the team sheets. Obviously, the picture that I've given is him giving Mitrovic a bit of a hard time last season. Next, it has to be Harvey Barnes for me. I think... you know, it's a hard one, isn't it, with Harvey Barnes? I think he does go under the radar a bit, but I think some of that is due to his injury record. He's had a bit of a hard time when it comes to injuries. Obviously broken in now after a couple of loan periods into that Leicester setup. And at 23 years of age, I think he's just going to get better and better. Last season, he did return 9 goals and 4 assists in what was only 25 games. As I talk about that injury record, might be why he's going a bit under the radar so far, and maybe why people aren't perhaps talking about him as much as they perhaps should. But he's an absolute unreal talent, and I think if he can stay fit, then he'll probably be really responsible for shooting Leicester back up to the table, because they've probably not had the start to the season so far that they would have wanted, or really what anyone expected. I think some people were tipping, and me included, were tipping Leicester for the top 4 this season. And it doesn't really look to have worked out so far. But Harvey Barnes could have a massive chance of, you know, that redemption for Leicester. Moving on to number 6. And Oh, this was such a tough one because I don't know if I'm being a bit harsh only on Chris Wood at putting him in number 6. I'll be surprised if anyone wouldn't have Chris Wood in the top 10. He's scored 10 plus goals in the Premier League since 17-18. So that's, that's what now, 4 seasons he's done that. Yeah, I think so 4 seasons, but he's done that consecutively. His best one coming in 1920, where he actually delivered 14 goals. And last season, he still delivered 12 goals. But what's really interesting about this is, of course, he's playing for Burnley. Burnley only scored 33 goals last season. 12 of those came from Chris Wood, which shows just how much of an impact he has. And probably without him, I hate to say it, but maybe Burnley would have already gone down to the Championship. So I think, he does a lot to keep Burnley up. As I say, 33 goals last season, 12 of them came from this man, Chris Wood. And I really, that's more than a third, isn't it? So, but I don't feel he gets the plaudits he deserves. Maybe it's because he plays for Burnley. I don't really know. But, I think there was a period a couple of years ago where he was maybe being tipped for one of the bigger clubs to play like a second role. But he's definitely a real talent. And, I think he is perhaps quite underrated, to be honest. Going on to the next one. I love this guy, Thomas Souček. As a neutral, watching West Ham, I always love watching Souček. And I think it's not the fact that he's not rated at all, but I don't think he's rated as highly as I perhaps feel he should be. And I think there's a couple of players, particularly coming as we head into the top 5, that you'll see me talk about more. The fact that it's not that they're not rated, but they're not rated as perhaps as much as they should be. But yeah, Thomas Souček for me, he's just a complete midfielder, isn't he? He puts his body on the line. We've seen that a couple of times already this season, although I think one of them was accidental when he got the good old boot to the face, didn't he, in one of the games, which sustained a quite nasty cut as well. But yeah, away from that, he's a complete box-to-box midfielder. I think he does the defensive duties well for West Ham. And, he also does the attacking duties very well as well. Obviously, last season, returning 10 goals and 1 assist. From a player that's not particularly playing in the attacking mid role, it's more that box-to-box role. That is very impressive returns. And, West Ham are in unbelievable form at the moment. And I know Mikel Antonio, rightfully so, is getting a lot of plaudits. So is Declan Rice. But this man can't go unnoticed. And I think it's not the fact, as I say, that he's not rated, but I think he needs putting on a higher pedestal than what he is, because I think he's such a top class player. On to number 4. Keeping on with the West Ham theme. And as I said earlier in the video about Max Killman, this Aaron Cresswell for me is someone that really deserves that England call-up. I think he's been absolutely brilliant in that left-back position. And maybe that's why he's going a little bit under the radar. I think there is starting to be some talk about him a bit more. But that left side for England has obviously been quite strong in the last year with Luke Shaw and Chilwell performing well on the build-up to the Euros, which obviously meant Cresswell didn't get a look in. But you now wonder that, you see Luke Shaw not really performing how he did when he was with England for the World Cup for the Euros. You do now wonder whether Aaron Cresswell deserves that England call-up. And I think just in general, he needs to be talked about as about one of the best left-backs in the Premier League. I think his defensive ability is absolutely brilliant. And it's not just that. He's really starting to add the goals and assists now, which, he's added both this season. He's a bit of an all-rounder for me in that left-back position. And I think, it's not just his defensive duties. He also plays some great balls in as well. There's that delivery. And I think he's another reason. There's quite a few players now where people keep on saying West Ham are underperforming. They have a few real good stars in that team. And it wouldn't surprise me if they kept that momentum throughout the season, to be honest. Moving on to the top 3, Rodri. It's a hard one, isn't it, for Rodri? I feel he came into Man City, obviously with probably the job of replacing Fernandinho, which was never going to be an easy task, especially at the age he came to the Premier League. I believe he was only 23 years old when he joined the Premier League. he had to adapt to the Premier League. Obviously, some of the best players in the history of the Premier League, such as Thierry Henry, even took time to adapt to the Premier League. But I feel like all eyes were on him straight from the start. I feel this season a bit like he hasn't made the list, but a little bit like Pablo Fornells, you know, who also is a Spanish player. I feel that he just needed some time to adapt to the Premier League. And now we really are seeing the best of Rodri. And some of his performances this season have been absolutely fantastic. I think it's just one of them with him. You can't really throw stats. It's one of those that you just have to watch him play football and then you'll understand why he's underrated, which ties in perfectly to my number 2, Jorginho. And I'd say the exact same with this guy. I was watching a bit of a highlight reel of him the other day, and I know these highlight reels can give a bit of a misguided kind of look, because obviously it always brings out the best. But it was the balls that he had played that didn't result in goals. And it made me realise, you know, even more so, just how good this guy is at passing the ball, unlocking the channels, bringing people into play and in behind the defensive line. And I really think Jorginho contributes so much to Chelsea. There has been talk of Ballon d'Or, particularly from Chelsea fans. I don't think he'll quite get that, because I think Messi had an absolutely fantastic season last season. But to be fair to him, Jorginho, he did deliver the European Championships, which obviously breaks England's fans' hearts still. But he had a fantastic year, and I really think he's a bit underrated in the Premier League. I think he's not one of those pretty players, is he? He'll just do what needs to be done. He's a bit like Rodri. He'll do the stuff that doesn't really go noticed, don't really get noticed and goes a bit unnoticed. And yeah, I really feel with Jorginho, very much underrated, and he does take my number 2. So guys, if you have seen the thumbnail and obviously the start of it, you know who's coming in at number 1. And I'd be surprised if there's much debate on this. Bernardo Silva for me. Bernardo Silva is definitely the most underrated player in the Premier League. And it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I feel he's a bit underrated, maybe because of Pep. I feel like Pep, and more so this season, he was one of those players that felt like he was going to be moved on. I think Pep has perhaps not played him as much as he deserves. But this guy can play absolutely everywhere. And we saw that against United, didn't we? Where he was playing almost in that, what I'd call a Bobby Firmino role, where he was playing almost as that number false 9. But then we saw throughout that game, he went into an 8, he went into a 6, he went into a 10. There's nothing this guy can't do. He can play on the left side, right-hand side, centre of the park, attacking mid, and now we've also seen as a full striker. And I think he just oozes class. I think he's an absolutely amazing player. And I really have to say, for me, he is the most underrated player in the Prem. I'm a bit surprised that Pep doesn't play him more. But if he does eventually get moved on, I really do hope that he stays in the Premier League, to be honest, because I think it'd be a great shame if we if we did lose him from the Premier League. So guys, that is my 10-1 of the most underrated players in the Premier League. Let me know your thoughts. Was I speaking absolute rubbish? Who have I missed? Because I know I'm going to have missed someone. So please do let me know. Make sure to hit that like button. And if you have enjoyed the video and you're new here, also hit that subscribe button. And we shall see you on the next video. Goodbye.